Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's great to see you here again. I know I don't make a video strictly every week like I should, but I do try and make at least 2 a month. So okay, so I hope you're enjoying the weekend so far. For today's video, or let's say this week's video, I'm going to be talking to you about some of the issues around kind of digital marketing. And I had a good think about what I could do for the topic for the video, rather than just doing what everybody else is doing, which is talking about all the different tools and stuff. And that is, as I've mentioned before, that is a big issue, if you like, or nuance in digital marketing. Everybody likes to talk about the tools and how the latest tech is going to help them to scale and make money, and that kind of helped me to kind of drill down what I'm going to talk about today, which is why you need to have a tried and tested business model first before you jump on the bandwagon with things like AI and automation and all the rest of the apps and the tools and stuff. So okay, so I'm mainly going to be talking freelance on on the cam in front of me. I've got a little bit of stuff on the screen. I might look down now and again, but ultimately, I just want to kind of, everyone's got this dream to, especially founders of new businesses and stuff, and you see it a lot with the job adverts. The way they're written, it's all about what tools can you use, etc., etc. And the kind of guiding belief is, I don't necessarily agree with it all, is that the more tools that you have, the more tools you know how to use, the more tools that you know about, the more successful you're going to be. And I don't quite agree with that. I genuinely think that it's the business model that makes the money, and a lot of founders, even businesses which are running already, they're trying to run before they can walk, and a lot of them tend to kind of skip past this step of validating the business model. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what it is. Okay, so look, so I've got a bit of stuff in front of me. I'm not going to be reading off the screen like literally, but I would say because there's a lot of addiction, isn't there, to the apps and the hype and the AI and all the rest of it. And I've actually got a spreadsheet which I try to keep updated, but you do get a bit fatigued by it because it's so long and there's new stuff out every month. If I went to ChatGPT now, or Perplexity, or Claude, or one of the other chatbots, and just typed in, tell me what software as a service has been released this month, there'll be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more. So it's constantly updating. Like this last month we had Sora 2, amongst others. But you see, that's not the thing that makes the money, guys. So I've got some stuff in front of me. Just kind of, I'd describe it not as like a a long essay, but more kind of bulletin points, which I'm going to read off a little bit, which you can use to just help you navigate the process, if that's a better way to put it, to make sure that you've got a business model that makes money, a business model that works, and that you're not just trying to do what the classic mistake that so many other businesses, whether they're brand new businesses or small businesses, are trying to do, which is to scale with something that necessarily isn't proven to work, so to speak. So okay, so like a couple of tips here. So I'm going to be reading off screen a little bit now. So outline of the current climate. So we kind of covered this a bit, like AI hype, app addiction, and the obsession with scaling something that doesn't yet work. So you need to be sure that it works. Okay, so obviously you can't automate profit. If you could, we'd all be doing that. You need to have something that works already. Once you have something that works already, in phase 2, once that business model is proven to work, then you can look at scaling and growing it through various forms of automation and different tech tools and apps and stuff. So look, a good example of this is, like, I went looking for before I decided on this video topic, I was going to make a video about a SaaS platform called 500 Apps. So there's like 500 apps within one. I looked at it kind of 6 months ago. It did look quite good, especially for the price. So much features and content, and it really caught my eye. And I included it in the spreadsheet that I kind of keep updated. But I went looking for it this morning because I was going to make a video about that, because I thought there was like a lot of content there that I could make a video about. And the first thing that came up is that it's permanently closed. The base headquarters in India. So obviously they've struggled to monetize it. So that kind of feeds into my next comment, which is startups are building dashboards for ideas that don't sell. So maybe it's the same thing, and I've heard this from other people as well, is that a lot of business founders, especially because they're so excited about the vision that they have for a business, they call it being sort of blinded by the vision. Maybe they think it's a great idea. My boss was like that to a certain degree, and many others, not just him. I'm sure you can relate to what I'm saying, that people maybe get a bit carried away with the business idea. In their heart and mind and soul, it ticks all the boxes and it seems like a great idea. But if people aren't willing to pay for it, not even a little bit, then you're going to struggle to sell it later on. So I would kind of recommend, the same thing happens with paid ads as well. You see a lot of businesses, running paid ads. Now, paid ads is a very broad term, by the way. It doesn't just mean like PPC. It could mean anything like ad roll. Could mean paid social. It could be a ton of platforms. Or nowadays, there's quite a lot of tech software as a service platforms, which will allow you to run paid ads on multiple platforms via one dashboard. One example of that is like Marin software. If you check it out on Google, you'll see, it's not the cheapest, but it seems to be quite established. But it's a very broad term, and a lot of, as again, you see this in the job ads as well, the contracts and the tenders, they're all asking for experience with paid ads. And Google have just recently redone the, Google Ads interface, like a lot of the layout of everything has changed, things have moved around, there's some new sections, depending on what type of campaign you hope to run, you might be faced, or that's the wrong way, you might be looking at, running like a smart campaign which runs off AI, so it takes a couple of days to learn before it starts to deliver any kind of meaningful results. But they have changed the platform, they've changed the algorithm a bit, and to favour certain types of ads and content and stuff. So look, the nitty gritty of what I'm getting at here is a lot of companies, small businesses, especially startups, the obsession is running paid ads. The belief is that the more people that get to see whatever they're trying to promote or offer, the more successful they'll be. But if people aren't willing to pay a little bit for it, and if you haven't run any kind of pilot tests or A/B tests and stuff, with a kind of minimum viable offer, so to speak, you're going to struggle to get people to pay for it later on, even if you run like masses of paid ads. So I just need to take a sip of my drink there. So it happens a lot. You see it every week. Companies you speak to, tenders that you look through, agencies, putting out ads for, media, not so much media buyers, they're buying in media, but basically paid ad specialists. And look, that does work if you've got, as I've said, if you've got like a viable business. But if it's very, very common now for startups, SMEs, small businesses. There are people who are just trying to, maybe make their first, 100k or 250k or whatever it might be, to be so kind of overly focused on paid ads and scaling through automation and stuff. I mean, not so long ago I had like two ladies from London. I'm not going to say anything bad here, don't worry. They ran like some kind of musical, some kind of musical. I think it was piano training, something like that. And they were talking about when I spoke to them, they were talking about automations and looking to automate stuff, and I totally get it, because people want to save money, they want to save time, but if you're not at that stage yet, if you're not ready, in terms of a business model being tried, tested and proven, and you haven't got new venues, new staff, and do you see what I mean? It's a bit too easy to get ahead of a game and stuff. And it costs money to run paid ads as well. I mean, it's not exactly cheap. It can be a bit cheaper or a bit more expensive depending on which platforms you use and how you kind of run the campaigns. But you get my point. So what we got? So section 2. So the foundation. What is the business model? What a business model really is. So that's what I encourage you to kind of drill down and focus on, instead of getting carried away with the tech stack and stuff. So to define it simply, a business model is the system that consistently converts attention or activity into revenue. Unlike this YouTube channel, I don't say that negatively. Like I've got like 1,300 subscribers thereabouts, and I've been doing it for just over 18 months. I had the YouTube account open for maybe 5-6 years. 5-6 years, but I've only kind of started doing it a bit more seriously 18 months ago. But for me, it serves as a slightly different purpose, because it feeds into my work sector, with AI taking the center stage with a lot of things, and automation. Videography and video editing is something which a lot of AI can do some of it, but it can't do all of it, and even the stuff it can do, you have less control over it. So I mean, there are some really successful creators, and it's the same with anything. Whatever you hope to do in life, just start somewhere. You're not going to be right up there. In the beginning, it's going to be a hard graft, but just start somewhere, because it does get, I remember quite clearly, getting to the first 100 was really hard work, to be honest, on YouTube. This is then getting to sort of setting mini milestones, so getting to 250, getting to 500. It's a bit of a push getting to 1,000, from 500 to 1,000. But once you get over 1,000 subscribers, YouTube kind of shows your subscriber count slightly differently. So it doesn't show, if you're sort of under 1,000, it will list it as, like, for example, like 900 and 989, 990, 991. You see what I mean? So people can see very clearly who's subscribed and who is unsubscribed. But once you get over 1,000, it kind of just presents it a bit differently. So mine will say 1.27k or 1.28k. You see what I mean? So if you get 1 or 2 unsubscribes, it won't necessarily show, which it will if you're under 1,000. But look, that's another conversation. So look, just getting back to this point here, like, it's 3 critical components I think you should be aware of. So value creation. What problem are you solving and for whom? I'm talking about the business model again. Identify what problem you're solving and for whom. Okay. How do you deliver that solution efficiently? So value delivery. Is it an online solution? Is it like an in-person solution? If it's a physical in-person solution, how does that tie in with you potentially scaling the business later on? Because everyone knows that it's easier to scale stuff online with a bit of automation and email marketing and links and they call it transactional email, actually. And another thing, so value capture. So how do you get paid repeatedly and sustainably? Are people going to pay for a payment link? Are they going to pay into your bank account? Are they going to tap their contactless cards on your on your thing, if it's an in-person, on your little console or device or whatever it is? If it's like an in-person business, are they going to pay cash? Are you going to accept cash cards? Bitcoin, there's not many places that accept Bitcoin, although it's starting to grow a bit. But it's just another question you need to ask yourself. So just to recap, what problem do you solve and for whom? How do you deliver that solution efficiently in order to scale later on? And how do you get paid repeatedly and sustainably? These are all questions you need to be asking yourself, instead of just doing what everybody seems to do, which is, you know, paid ads straight away, get on social media, you know, blah blah blah. Because if people, as I mentioned, if people won't pay a little bit for your product, you know, you need to run some tests first, you know, what's the product, service, see what they pay for it, you know. But even if you run paid ads, you're going to struggle to get people to pay later on, you know. So you need to validate that business model. So okay, so section 3, so how to devise and test a viable business model. Okay, so start with the customer problem, as I just mentioned in the last section of the video. Talk to potential customers. Okay, don't send surveys, maybe engage with them, you know, have conversations, you know. You get much better feedback from engaging with people face to face or on the phone, you know, business to business context or business to consumer context, or, you know, direct to consumer, D2C. So you'll kind of get better feedback that way, as opposed if you just send like a survey. I mean, I don't think people, every time I get a survey, I don't really do it, to be honest. I don't know if that's me being lazy, but you know, because they're so widespread surveys, I don't think people perhaps don't take them that seriously, unless it comes from a really credible brand, which, you know, they're happy with and they use a lot. So I would just recommend maybe, you know, setting up a bit of a steering group, maybe speaking to them on the phone, you know, speaking to them at exhibitions to try and gauge and gather their feedback about how they feel about what you're offering and that type of thing. So that's what I'd recommend, you know. The goal identity. So the goal identity plan that is urgent, specific and budget backed. So just to summarize what that means, like, you know, identify, I didn't kind of phrase it the right way, so identify, you know, identify pain points that people might have, e.g. your potential customers, businesses. Identify what their pain points are, you know, what they might be struggling with, and how, as a business or would-be business, your startup or SME, or if you're a founder or whatever it might be, can overcome those pain points for that business in a way which is cost effective for them as a customer. Okay, create a minimal version of the offer. So like, it's quite common, this phrase, a minimal version of the offer. So basically, you know, it doesn't have to be super polished, but you need to have some kind of, you know, minimum version of the offer, so to speak. It could be a mock-up, it could be a manual service, pilot project, but just something just to test the water, because again, you know, you see this with a lot of you know, and unless it's like a business, you've got a lot of kind of money thrown at it, like, you know, venture capital and, you know, round C series funding and all this kind of stuff. You know, you'll find that people just kind of rush into social media and paid ads, and there's no guarantee. Like I said, you could be on 100 different platforms with paid ads, you know, spending thousands a week, but not have a viable business. Does that make sense? Some of the most successful businesses that I've seen have always had like a very strong business model. Maybe they don't need to do all the other fancy stuff with the ads and the automation, and that's kind of my central theme of the video today. I do, and I've picked up on it before, I do think a lot of marketeers, businesses, especially startups, founders, we get far too carried away with you know, this belief that, you know, the faster they scale, and the more paid ads they run, that, you know, the more money they're going to make, and, you know, they're going to retire early and stuff. But if you haven't got a business model, you got nothing, I'm afraid. So okay, so the point is, test the willingness of people to pay with a kind of A/B test pilot project or something. You know, it doesn't have to be super polished, but just test the willingness to pay, because, you know, I've mentioned this once already, you know, if they won't pay a little bit, we're not going to pay anything later on after you've spent hundreds or thousands on paid ads. Okay, so change early, learn fast. Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's phrased multiple different ways. I mean, one of the common kind of acronyms, if you like, in digital marketing, or quotes is a better way to put it, is, if you're going to fail fast. So similar kind of concept, change early, learn fast. If you're going to fail fast, it's commonly quoted in marketing circles. So just focus on conversion over kind of vanity metrics. Try and tap, depending on what the products and services, try and tap into the kind of emotional triggers, if you like, of that, and figure out what a customer journey is like. Every product's got a customer journey, so you need to be figuring out what a customer journey is. When you look at a lot of the tech software as a service platforms nowadays, they all look the same. So it's got like pricing, a little button saying get started. When you click pricing, it's got the basic plan, the kind of medium tier plan, and then the enterprise plan, contact sales, and then you got another section saying uses by sector, and then you got all the different sectors, and all the different possibilities. People are actually a bit bored with looking at the same kind of layouts and the same structures, and all these websites look the same. And even though there's hundreds of software as a service platforms that are out there, and there are, believe me, when you look at them, and I don't expect that you would, but obviously, I do or have, and but not every week, but I definitely keep an eye on them and stuff, and update the spreadsheet that I've got, and they all look the same. So they're not differentiating themselves, I don't believe, well enough. Some do, but there's many more that don't, and it's almost like they're singing off the same hymn sheet. So they've got everything looks the same. The structure of the website, pricing, get started, etc., and a bit of fancy blurb on the front page, and contact us to get a demo and stuff. And just think, potentially you could get you could cut through the noise a lot more if you had a different structure, different layout, and if it came across as something that's truly different, rather than something that's kind of rehashed 1,000 times by many other companies. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say on that. So test the cost of acquisition, cost of getting a customer, basically, and delivery. So run some small scale tests, measure how much it costs to get one paying customer. So cost per acquisition, CPA, and these are things you need to know before you even think about, scaling. How much does it cost you to get one customer? Does it cost you $5? Does it cost you, $10, $50? Do you see what I mean? So, depending on what country, it could be pounds, dollars, euros, but you get the general idea, or rupees or whatever. But, how much does it cost you to get one customer? Because, if it's costing you loads, and that customer's not sticking around. See, that's another thing for customer. It might cost you $50 to get one customer. But if that customer is like a fly-by-night customer and they don't stick around, by that I mean maybe they subscribe for 1 month and then you never see them again. And if you've spent sort of 50 quid, trying to get a customer, it costs you 200 quid to get them up and running for the first month. Do you see what I mean? So there's all kinds of things to kind of look at. It's not as black and white. It's just I think this is a misconception. Maybe back in the day, you could just throw up a website and tell people that you're an award-winning this, that, or the other and stuff. But people look for social proof now. They check out your profile in Dole Suite. Just type in the limited company name, ENDOLE, in Google. It'll bring up the public records. You can usually find a company. Sometimes you have a slightly different limited company name. You can usually find that by looking on their website and terms and conditions, or contact us, or at the bottom of the page, and you'll find it. But people look for social proof, so they're not just looking at social media and likes and stuff. They're looking at the public records and how many branches you've got. We're looking at things like reviews on Trustpilot. Do you see what I mean? So if they can see growth and traction and hundreds, thousands of people talking about your business, and lots of reviews on lots of different sites. And also they'll check out your SEO profile on SEMrush or Ahrefs or Screaming Frog, and they aggregate all that information and put it together. And if they think you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes by saying you've got an amazing business when you've got nothing, and you're trying to scale and blag them with automation and stuff, you're just digging your grave in the business sense, so to speak. It's not going to last, So this is why it's important to. That's why I wanted to make this video today, rather than just running through a load of apps and tools and stuff. Because everyone, look, some of these things are useful. I don't deny that. They can help, but they've got to be introduced at the right time, and only if you've got a viable business model. Okay. So test just on this thing of testing how long it cost of acquisition and delivery and stuff. So test how long it takes to serve like a customer, or a client. If it's something that's delivered by physically, how long does it take to reach the customer? Is it something that's delivered instantly, like an online course, which something like automation might help with that a bit more? Or is it something a bit more physical? It might be a physical business where you're running like a cafe and you get a bit busy and it takes you over half an hour to serve one customer because you've got a backlog and only so many staff. So you've got things to think about, and what's right for one business isn't necessarily right for another business. And there's no one size fits all, there really isn't. And it's just kind of important to think a bit like this, instead of just going all out paid ads and talking about tech and tools and automation and stuff. So in a nutshell, that's kind of all I wanted to say, really. I think you got the gist of it. I could go on and on, but I don't see the point. So hopefully you've got some good takeaways. Slightly different video today, but I thought it was relevant because so many of the kind of YouTube marketing videos, it's all about kind of pretentious, not all, but a lot of the videos come across as a bit pretentious, with people claiming how to make 28 grand in 10 days with no experience, no code, no money, and it's a bit, I think it's nonsense, really. I really do. Look, if it was that easy, I would have done it already. I would have done it every single month for the last 15 years. So if you've got money, you can always make money. It's a bit easier to make money if you've got money, right? And also if you own land, it's a bit easier to make money, because even if you don't actually have a business on that land, you've always got the possibility of selling that land to a property developer, and you can almost certainly make money out of that, depending on where that land is. People who own land or who have money can normally get a business off the ground, or turn that asset into revenue much more easily than people who don't have that land or who don't have some money to make more money. So look, I'll shut up, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great rest of the weekend, and I hope to see you again soon. So cheers.